and welcome back to Watches Tonight. I'm your host, Tim Mosso. Thank you for joining me from far flung. Tonight, we are talking about unexpected omegas. Which of today's watch trends will look dated in the year 2040? Plus, down and dirty restoration work at Vacheron. Not a watch, the entire brand. All of this and viewer wrist shots will feature tonight on Watches Tonight. But first, there is no better place than the folks who pay my salary and provide these pixels. TheWatchBox.com. Buying, trading, or selling, we are 24 hours a day and global. We have a new website, and of course, I promised you that I would pay you for your time. We have 26,000 entrants in our Omega Seamaster Railmaster giveaway, and I will be announcing the winner at the end of this show, so stay tuned. Also, shameless self-promotion, please open another window, pick up your phone, join me on Instagram, Tim_Mosso, nothing but video reviews in 60-second segments, smaller and more digestible than Watchbox reviews, and updated nightly. All right, we got friends joining in from far flung, and I can see there are quite a few already in the box. Let me respect those who have already forwarded wrist shots, because you guys are the pillar of the show. With your wrist shots, Franklin C. leads us off, taking the plunge with my new Sunday show. If you're watching the Watchbox Reviews channel, I now have a watch review show on Sunday morning. That's his Rolex Sea Dweller 43 in good company. JCS joins with his interwar era Unitas double scale chronograph with its twin telemeter tachymeter and a lovely image of column wheel chronograph bliss in the background. A good friend of the company and personally shares his JLC Master Grand Tourbillon on a new JLC factory strap with contrasting stitch. Thank you for trusting our company. And Abdul R captures his Maelstrom Bronze Diver in Germany. This is a new brand for our wrist shots. Welcome aboard and send your wrist shots to Monday Mailbag at thewatchbox.com to see your analog on my digital. Roger H asks, we're going to throw this one to the field. If the Omega Speedmaster is a sports chrono / pilot's line and the Seamaster is primarily aquatic sports watches, and the Constellation is, at least in theory, the dress watch line, what is the purpose of the Omega Deville collection today? This is a great question because the Deville is neither purely dress-oriented nor sports-oriented. It's a spectrum collection, and it seems to serve a wild card role for testing new concepts and even genre-blending models at Omega. Jump to the box I could see right here. I want to acknowledge our first Ernesto Guerrero in the box. I could see Alan L. Felipe Z joining from St. Augustine, Florida. We've got Matt Foster, Vegas Milgauss, he of the White Dial anti-magnetic watch. We've got Burning Mr. B from Holland, Ben S. Derek P. from Los Angeles. We got Heroldas G joining in. Hey, Heroldas. And Russell 996 from the UK. Barra Vader. We've got Nolan Reed from Atlanta and True Live from the Great White North up in Canada. O'Neill Miller joining in from the Second City in Chicago, and JBO Surf from Adelaide, Australia. All right, guys, I have built more time than usual into this show for you and me to talk, so there will be plenty of exchange. But I do want to respect the question that was asked. What is the purpose of the Omega Deville collection? Well, in a sense, the Deville is used by Omega in the same role played by Oldsmobile at General Motors from the 1940s through the 1990s. It could be tough to tell an Olds from an upscale Pontiac or an entry-level Buick. So what was the real purpose of Oldsmobile? Well, it was often a test bed, to wit, automatic transmissions and overhead valve engines during the 1940s. Turbocharging and front-wheel drive during the 1960s, the infamous Olds diesel experiment during the 70s, that one didn't go so well, CRT and advanced instrumentation during the 1980s, computerized instruments courtesy of Oldsmobile. Bet you didn't think they had computerized instruments like that during the 1980s in American cars, but if you were driving not your father's Oldsmobile, you would have known. And finally, avant-garde style during the 1990s with what was sort of a send-off model for the brand, the Aurora. Now compare that to the Omega Deville line, and there are parallels here run amok. Omega's only modern jump hour watch was released in 1998 as the Deville Prestige Jump Hour. The first coaxial, if you recall, was an Omega Deville 20 years ago in 1999, and that 99-piece salmon dial platinum version is the one to own if you want to collect modern Omega watches. We saw wild experimentation during the 2000s with the sapphire case Deville Hour Vision in 2007. Remember, the sapphire viewports in the sides of this watch gave birth to the modern notion of sapphire cases, which run the gamut from entry level with I guess you could call Hublot entry level at 50 grand, all the way up to the $1 million watches of Richard Mille and Grubel Forsey. We also saw in the Deville line Omega's first annual calendar and Omega's first silicon hairspring with the 2008 Deville Hour Vision annual calendar, plus the 1951 Toledo-influenced mid-2000s Deville X2 collection, which was basically a test balloon to see if Omega could market a square watch. It didn't work out, but that's what the Deville collection is for, testing. And in 2011, an 88-piece skeleton dial platinum Deville Hour Vision. This is Omega doing high horology, and exquisitely. Let's not forget, during the same time period, the mighty Omega Tourbillon entered the Deville collection, and it too spawned its own skeleton dial variant. Continuing into the present day, Omega continues to experiment with the Deville line to include models like the enamel dial Trésor 125th anniversary, a no-date enamel dial manual wind dress watch from Omega. That's one hell of a timepiece, and yes, it's a Deville. So what is the Deville? It's everything from 100-meter water-resistant hour visions to high horology craft arts, and the entire spectrum of watches in between. It's where Omega goes to the laboratory. Okay, jumping into the box, I can also mention there is a way for Omega to experiment further down market with avant-garde concepts, such as the mighty teddy bear dial Deville Orbis. Okay, this one is for pediatric ocular health, a charitable cause, and as you can see, if we can go full screen with that, not only is it a voguish modern blue dial, it is a voguish modern blue dial with little teddy bears. Build-A-Bear indeed, in Switzerland, if you will. This is a timepiece that is part of the Deville collection, and deliciously so. Okay, let me jump into the box. Let's talk a little bit, because I said I was going to build in some time for us to chat, and I'm going to stick to it. We got Sean F. joining from England, and we've got Pilot Style 123 joining in from Ireland. Okay, let's see what questions you guys have got me for the night. I got Ray H. saying, I got a new Batman and I own the 2018 Pepsi. If you had to keep one as your everyday, which one would you keep? I guess a lot of this is going to come down to which colors do you like better, and, well, realistically, do you like the Pepsi or do you like the RC Cola? I hate calling the watch the Batman, and I'm not going to call it the Batgirl, but do you like black and blue or do you like the Pepsi, the blue and the red? I would say, honestly, I still think the black and blue is more unique. There are a lot of Pepsi watches out there from several generations of the GMT-Master, but by the same token, if you're a Rolex classicist, you're probably going to want to keep the Pepsi, because after all, that was the first, and for many that will remain the favorite. I do think it will be more identifiable with the GMT, since we're using that number in the year 2040, but I also think that the black and the blue, to me, a guy who loves the color blue, would be the one to keep. Also, I see right here, we've got Michael Taylor joining from Charlotte. We've got Liba Campbell-Roberts from London. And then we've got Richard T. joining us from the left coast, and Lil0990 from Townsville, Australia, checking in. We got 5140 from Manila. Okay, guys, let me know right here. What would you like? Okay, here we go. Zach Blass. Tim, what do you think of Omega's Daniel Craig being spotted in lately? Bond Seamaster and Omega Seamaster Bullhead. Well, let me just say that I love the Bullhead, both historically, the original 1969 models, and the modern examples, which are some of the few truly limited modern Omega limited edition chronographs. So I think it's great that Craig is showcasing the whole line. Was he paid to do so? Undoubtedly. Am I happy that he's showcasing the Bullhead? Hell yeah. It's one of the most interesting watches that Omega makes, and if you really want a special Bullhead, go back and get the 2016 Rio Olympic edition, which was absolutely awesome. It was the right watch in the right color scheme. I'm not going to say colorway, because that is one of those cliches that's just like nails on a chalkboard to my ears. Right here I could see we have a comment on Oldsmobile from one in our box. From Henry West, Olds was pretty much the first mass-manufactured non-bespoke passenger car. That's true. The curved dash Olds, before Olds was part of General Motors, was the first mass-produced American car on an assembly line. We got Shane P. Kiwi in the house. All right. Bob Golub asking, Tim, what is your opinion of the new Moonwatch 321? Well, for those of you who are following over the weekend, there is a new Moonwatch Calibre 321. It is 42 millimeters, Moonwatch cased, Professional case profile, but platinum cased. Calibre 321, for which annual production is supposedly capped at 2,000 a year. It's a special edition watch, not a limited edition, but again, there are structural constraints, such as the total 321 output. I'd be shocked if they sell 2,000 of these. Now, moving in from the platinum case, there is an Onyx Dial, which is sensational, black onyx. Not enamel, but rare onyx cut and finished for dial applications. The registers are moon meteorite, which is lovely. So you have moon rock registers. And then finally, turn it all over, you've got the Calibre 321. And not the 321 from the pre-moon watches, no. This is an artisanally hand-finished 321. This is a 321 as Vacheron would do it. I love the watch. It is going to be very expensive, and it's also going to be one of those watches that pre-owned will sell for 65 cents on the dollar. I expect it'll have its 18-month heyday. There will be a period when people are marking it up and selling it for more secondary markets. There will be a wait list initially, but I don't think a precious metal watch ultimately, especially one that is not a limited edition, is going to be a long-term store of value. So if you must have the newest and coolest thing, go for it, but don't feel stabbed in the back when Omega eventually launches a mass production Calibre 321. Just appreciate the watch for what it is. Exquisite. The kind of chronograph you would normally get from the likes of Geneva's finest, not Omega. Don't expect it to be an investment. Okay, right here, we got JIKO19 asking, will there be a 321 in steel? If yes, when is the likely release? Well, I think the best time to do this would be the year following the return of the 321. If you remember last year's 25th anniversary Seamaster Diver 300 meter, they launched the standard 42mm watch first. Then later on, the show-stopping no-date 43.5mm black ceramic came out in 2019. I believe that Omega is going to launch the special editions this year, and either next year for pre-Basel, because pre-Basel could be anything, even if you're not, like Omega, going to be at Basel, or you'll see it launched someplace like Watches and Wonders or one of the trade shows on the side of the industry, like Dubai Watch Week. You will see a steel 321 launched, but it will not be the 321 in the new Moonwatch Platinum. It will be a mass-produced version of the 321, and I think it'll happen next year. Okay, jumping in right here. Tim, do you think Omega will put the 321 in the normal Moonwatch? Yes, I do. Okay, Jonathan S. asks, hey Tim, what will be the cliches of our era that appear dated from the perspective of future collectors in the year 2040? Well, I don't have a crystal ball. There is a magic 8-ball somewhere on the set. I know we have it. I don't know where it is, but I won't need it. This is a great query because it opens the door to a quick retrospective. Namely, what do we consider dated from our vantage point? Well, we look back and see steel yellow-gold two-tone as a style inextricably stuck in the 80s and 90s, alongside DeLoreans and Trolls, respectively. I'm not really a fan of the Trolls. I am a fan of the DeLorean. That one, retrospectively, is cool. Rubber straps aren't going away, but they became the butt of jokes in the 2000s for ubiquity and visual excess, after AP and Patek Philippe essentially gave rubber straps their blessing within high horology during the late 1990s. During the 2000s, the rubber strap became a cliche, and it still feels that way, especially on certain timepieces. In our era, I would say NATO straps are the craze of the 2010s, even if I believe we're in the final 5 minutes of this particular trend. Instagrammer Jed McCormack has highlighted adroitly how some NATO strap matches are likely to endure the test of history, and also applications that are less likely to stand the test of time, alongside John Lennon's Rolls-Royce. And make no mistake, John Lennon's Rolls-Royce is the ultimate period piece for those with the means. Full ceramic case watches. Let's talk about them because I think they are going to be a thing of the past. Back in 2012, when the PAM 438 Tutanero came out, you could still plausibly say that ceramic watches, full case, full bracelet, were the next big thing. It turned out not to be the case. Here's the deal. They are scratch resistant, but they are also frangible. You can fracture them, you can crack them. And not only can you crack and destroy them, but the case replacement becomes mandatory, and they are ruinously expensive, even for entry-level watches with ceramic cases. So I feel like we've seen a pullback from ceramic cases. Ceramized is the new hip thing. You have either a titanium or an aluminum core, and then a ceramic layer is grafted onto the exterior. The outside is ceramized. For a great example of this, take a look at Zenith's ceramized cases. It gives you a case that can't fracture, that is feather light, that is hypoallergenic, and on its outside is just as scratch resistant as the old full ceramic. Another phenomena that I think will look dated in the future, and I do believe this is going to be very much of our era. It's going to be one of those things that a collector 21 years hence is going to point to and say, yeah, 2018, 2019, but it's going to be blue dials. And while the best blue dials will endure forever, that watch will never date. In fact, it precedes the modern blue dial trend because it came out in 2009. But I do believe that most of the current avalanche of blue dial watches, that's a quick blue dial watch image search on Google. That is an image search for blue dial watch, and I could have scrolled downward into infinity. It's just a bit much. I do think they will be as easy to place as products of our era as tail fins are in the eyes of future watch collectors. Now, we like tail fins, I'm a fan, but they do make it easy to locate in a temporal sense that particular style and that particular car. That's a 1959 Cadillac, and even my mom would be able to get within 5 years of the manufacturer of that vehicle guessing cold. Now, I should say that it's not that we don't love them, but stuff like that and today's blue dials will be collected by people who are connoisseurs of nostalgia and irony in the future. I'm also going to say that rose gold watches are going to look dated. Each era has its uncool metal, and it's usually the previous era's cool metal, which is to say, during my grandpa's heyday in the 1950s and 60s, white gold watches were considered to be something of an old man's choice. The people who were in their prime during the Depression years generally didn't want to wear gaudy colored gold. So through the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, yellow gold became almost the standard gold to the exclusion of everything else. In the early 1970s, Rolex even discontinued rose gold on most of its watches. Here's the thing. Today, the sight of a yellow gold watch evokes images of retirement ceremonies. It's the watch you get for retirement. Werther's Original Candies, bought by the bag. Shuffleboard and Sunday senior specials at Golden Corral. That's the image of the small, or petite, let's say, yellow gold watch today. And I believe that my generation, which will start to enter its 60s in the 2040s, will expect our once hip mandatory precious metal, rose gold, to be a calling card of those contemplating or already on Social Security and wondering whatever happened to blue dial watches. I will also say excessively thick watches. There was a period during the 2000s, and it continues to our age, where brands wanted it all. They wanted complication, they wanted affordable prices, they wanted immense water resistance, and you wound up with watches that were up to 20 millimeters thick. These are mainstream watches. Now, I'm not going to rag on Omega because everyone has done it and everyone has been guilty. This is a problem for TAG, for Breitling, which was probably the original offender of excessively thick watches, for AP, for Hublot, for Jaeger-LeCoultre, and Glashütte Original, all of which have given us great complication and capability, but also excessively thick timepieces. Thickness has become a deal killer alongside traditional factors such as style, price, lug fit, case size, and frankly, it's a problem. It's also a problem that I think will go away and become very much a dated factor of our era. Finally, vintage tribute watches. Please, enough. We need fresh ideas, and we need them badly. Or there will be no classics in the year 2040. That or the classics of today, 2019, the classics from the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, they'll still be the same classic watches that we look to and buy in the year 2040. Essentially, we've got an issue of creative bankruptcy with the vintage tribute watches, and if that continues for 21 years, we will have looked at a creative desert during that span. Reissued classics can be fun, infrequently, and that's the important thing. When you do it once in a while, it feels very special and memorable. But when you do it all the time, there's a human tendency to endlessly revisit successful ideas. And eventually, you run out of road, you get PT Cruisers. You get Chevy HHRs, and then before you know it, Will Smith turns into a giant blue genie. Guy Ritchie's directing, and we've run right off the rails. So please, head it off at the pass. Enough of the vintage tribute watches. New ideas, even if they fail, a la Omega Deville collection. If the watch designers of the 1950s and 60s had taken the easy path of nostalgia and simply fed their market what it wanted back in the day, what it remembered from 40 years prior to the 50s and 60s, we wouldn't have a 1953 Rolex Submariner to look back on. We would be talking about pocket watches in the 50s and 60s. It's time to move on. Curtail the vintage tribute. The T is for time on tributes, and I'm calling it. All right, jumping into the box right here. Abdul is saying we're talking about remakes of remakes at this point. And then we've got Zach Blass offering a counterpoint, saying I was at the Blancpain Hodinkey event. Beautiful size and watch. I'm not disputing. I'm just saying I'd like to see the next threshold broken. Innovation is relentless, and sometimes it's remorseless. Right here we have Max S saying, I love bigger watches because I have a large wrist. That's true, but if you could have the big watch without the thickness, you'd probably be just as happy. And right here, we have Vegas Milgauss mentioning Area 51. Did we storm the gates? Did that ever happen? You guys let me know in the box right here. And then we have Bob G saying there are too many re-editions of old models, and just the Pip saying creative bankruptcy. Dink, looking at you. Well, they did coin their own nickname, which I don't think, strictly speaking, is allowed. And then right here we've got Omegatron saying, agreed. I've gotten close to grabbing a Planet Ocean a few times, but that hilarious thickness stops the purchase in its tracks. I will also say this, if you want a Planet Ocean that is not literally as thick as my fist, look at the early Calibre 2500s from 2005. They're about 14 millimeters thick, which is almost identical to the current 13.7 millimeter thick Omega Seamaster Diver 300 meter, and so far no one's complaining about the girth of that one. Also, consider the first Aquaterras from 2002, because they're about 11.5 millimeters thick, and they're still coaxials, and some of them have display case backs. Okay, jumping into the box, we got a question from GCF, I'm just going to call him Tim. Higher quality, Timex or Hublot? Funny question, but there's something to be said here. Some folks will say that Timex Ironman and Casio G-Shock have integrity because they're not pretending to be something they aren't. Which one has higher quality? Obviously, Hublot is a luxury product. There is going to be more attention to detail. They are fun in their design sensibility, and some of the high-end pieces, the Unicos, the MPs, are legitimately beautiful both in their execution and their engineering. But I'll also say this, if you're not about the pretense and the image and the lifestyle that Hublot sells, if you don't want to be seen, if your watch isn't a calling card for your personal ego, wealth, or status, a lot of folks are going to say, I would rather go with the G-Shock or the Timex Ironman because I am not trying to send the message that the Hublot sends. So on a quality basis, obviously, the Hublot is the better watch. But in terms of which watch is perceived to have a more down-to-earth integrity, I don't think I can make that call. I've owned and worn G-Shock watches. I don't think I could wear an Hublot, and that's just my personal opinion. Okay, right here. We've got Eric Nielsen saying the 2500C runs at the wrong beat rate and frequently came back for repair adjustment. That's true, but if it's gone in for repair adjustment, it's been updated, probably to Delta status, in which case you're good to go. Okay, right here. Robert Dixon expressing that de Bethune is simply beyond one of the great brands. 150 watches made a year in L'Auberson. I would recommend it over FP Journe, even Philippe Dufour. You cannot get any better than DB this day and age. Okay, guys, I'm going to jump back into the program for the night. We're going to talk about viewer wrist shots. Ernesto G, he's in the box tonight, and now he's on the screen. He braves Animal Kingdom in Orlando, Florida with his Oris Divers 65. Jared L, he eclipses, in a way of speaking, the Moonwatch book with his own tritium dial Moonwatch. Randy B is a man after my own heart with his Longazite for striking time, and Simon H enjoys an in-flight Coke, in-flight over New Mexico. En route to home, guys. Keep them coming. Send your wrist shots to mondaymailbag@thewatchbox.com to see your watches on this box. Now let's talk about restoration required. Okay, a feature in which we're going to discuss a watch brand, that's my Oldsmobile again, that desperately needs a second look from both brand managers and collectors. And today we're talking about Vacheron Constantin, one of my favorite big group brands, maybe even my favorite big group brand. Here's the thing, Vacheron is looking at a far tougher market today than it faced during its heyday in the 1950s, 60s, and heck, why not the 1940s? Consider this. Back in the 1950s, when Vacheron was at zenith, not to be confused with Zenith, the company did not have many rivals. When we talk about the Holy Trinity, they were pretty much the only game in town, and Vacheron earned that status alongside Patek Philippe and Audemars Piguet because in the 1950s, owning a mechanical watch simply meant you had a watch. It meant telling time. It was exceptionally rare for someone to buy a mechanical watch as a luxury article, just as, for example, during the era of the 1910s, that transitional period between cars and horses, it was not exceptional to own a horse for transportation. Vacheron made a durable product. In the 50s, we forget that so many mechanical watches were Rosskopf movements. They were pin lever movements with 1 or 2 jewels. They were cheap watches that cost a few dollars or a few francs. They were designed to be worn for a few years or even a few months and then thrown out. There was a very limited market for luxury watches and little awareness of that segment. Now, consider the era of, well, today, of you and I. Luxury watches means mechanical watches, and mechanical watches means luxury watches. So Vacheron now has so many competitors just within Richemont, JLC, IWC, even some high-end Cartier models. They have to worry about the likes of Piaget infringing on their turf. And of course, there are other groups with other brands like Blancpain and Breguet that they've got to worry about, increasingly Bulgari and even Zenith. This is confusing. Now consider this in another frame of mind. There was a time when owning a horse meant owning transportation or bringing your goods to market. Back in the 1910s, when most people used horses and donkeys, even as cars started to enter the scene, you could buy a horse for $10, $15, and a Model T Ford cost a couple of $100. Now, let's face it, today, if you're buying a horse, you're interested in basically an equestrian lifestyle, something that is fairly elite, fairly expensive, and fairly rare. You're not going to be happy with some old nag, poorly bred, without its teeth. You don't have to worry about bringing your milk to market with whatever transport you can afford. Today, you buy from breeders. You buy from the best. There are much higher standards, and if you're in the market for a horse, you have many competing choices among breeders, and the standards are uncompromising. It's the same thing with luxury watches. Vacheron is in a much more demanding market today than it was during the 1950s. Everyone from F.P. Journe to Lange and everything in between. So, what's working? First and foremost, the Generation 3 Overseas. It launched weak back in 2016, but it has picked up. Since 2004, when the second generation watch arrived, the Overseas has been by far Vacheron's most consistently strong line. Its volume seller, and as its volume steel watch, probably also the gateway watch for a lot of folks who are new to the brand. Flexibility. Vacheron has the imagination to do almost anything and try almost anything. In that respect, they're more like AP than they are like Patek. Consider the Sputnik, a giant white gold satellite dial wandering hour watch. They made 10 pieces for the Moscow boutique back in 2007, and one of those just sold at the Antiquorum July auction for 84,500 francs. And I wish I'd known it was there, because that's one hell of a watch and one of my favorite Vacherons, and they were way ahead of the blue dial trend. So they put a Soviet satellite on a luxury watch. What else have they done? Le Cabinotier. Full custom. Do you want a custom watch that doesn't exist? Like the 57-260? Do you want dozens of complications and a piece unique the size of a baseball? You got it. All you have to do is ask. A case size and shape that doesn't exist. A complication they've never made. A hairspring that's never been conceived. Do you want your family on one side and the image of a Martian on the back? Vacheron is open to it. Just write a check. And of course, the craft arts. The Metier d'art, they are exceptional. Les Arrostiers, as you could see, last year's special craft art to succeed Les Masques. This was a series of enamel, of freehand engraving, of gold no less, and these watches are exquisite, made in only a few dozen pieces a year with real exclusivity. All of this is working. Vacheron has soul and style. Innovation, this year with the Twin Beat, back in 2016 with the Generation 3 Overseas, and last year launching the 56 collection in steel rather than launching the precious metal first and then waiting for sales to slacken. History and reputation, as I mentioned, Holy Trinity status. There may be others that are truly on par with what Vacheron's doing. Land. Crador. Lange and Crador, obviously. But the bottom line is that today, Vacheron still has that heritage, and no other brand can claim continuous operation since 1755. What is not working? Too many model lines. I went on Vacheron's website. How many model lines do they have? 10. That's ridiculous. How many do they need? Probably half that. They need a single dress watch line that's as strong as the Overseas. No Patrimony, no Traditionnel, no 56, no Harmony, all coexisting. That's confusing. People don't know the difference between them, and it shouldn't have to be explained. One dress watch line, please. Let's say the 5 lines should be Les Historiques, started in 1993, the best of the tribute watch genre. Timepieces that are classics in their own right. If I were to see no more tribute watches ever, I would still miss those, and you know how I feel about tribute watches. The Overseas, obviously. The sports watches. You need something that can swim. You need something that's always available in steel. You need a dress watch line. Just one, not 4 or 5. And you probably need the Metier dot, special watches that showcase what the brand can do at very low volume. And of course you need Cabinotier, the custom line, where someone with the imagination and the money can get literally anything. That's an image builder. There is too much perceived overlap. This is a big problem. What's not working at Vacheron? A lot of folks have trouble telling it apart from Piaget, JLC, some of the high-end IWC pieces, and Lange. Let's not forget that there are an awful lot of high-end haute de gamme luxury watches in the Richemont group, and that's before we even mention the high-end Cartier pieces, the high-end Mont Blanc pieces that are now being made by Mont Blanc Villeret, the old Minerva works. This is very confusing, and Vacheron needs to plan its model lines with them in mind first to reduce overlap in price and style. Ineffective marketing. Seriously, where is Vacheron's marketing? I don't know where it is. I live this lifestyle, and I have to seek Vacheron out to find it online and in person. Magazine ads, I know they do them, but is this 1997? Banner ads online. Is this 2007? Those are not effective strategies. I have no unintentional contact with the brand, and again, I'm in the industry. I should run into the brand all the time. Vacheron needs to work on this. How do you reach people who are not looking for you, or who may not even know you exist but have the means to play? What can be done? I have a few solutions. First, fewer model lines. Self-explanatory. Reduce that to like 5, with 3 real core model lines. A dress watch, the Overseas, Historique. Also, look at independence. The hottest thing in watchmaking today, it's the independent brands. It's Voutilainen. It is Lang und Heinrich. It is Moritz Grossmann, it's F.P. Journe, it's brands that are small, Hajime Asaoka out of Japan. Look at these small brands. You can't match their volume, but you can look at what they're doing right in terms of viral marketing, getting more for less, spreading the word by word of mouth between collectors, effectively marketing themselves online, talking to the collectors who know, and get yourself present at events that aren't necessarily watch industry trade shows. Continue to work on limiting your overlap, but focus on relationships, focus on collectors, and yes, focus on YouTube. I should also mention that there have been problems as recently as this year. Let's back up and explore that idea of overlap again. Both the 2019 JLC collection and the 2019 Vacheron collection included similar style blue automatic winding perpetual calendar watches. This should never happen. JLC also launched a monster multi-axis repeating watch that was confusingly similar to a Vacheron multi-axis tourbillon that was being peddled at the same time. This should not happen. Don't fall into the trap that destroyed Oldsmobile Vacheron. Define and jealously guard your place in the corporate hierarchy. And then work to make yourself as much like the independents as you can. I would also say the message needs to be more sophisticated and visceral than we're old and we make nice things. There is an ancient fallacy in the Swiss watch industry to the effect that if you make a great product, people will automatically buy it. No, they won't. They won't know it exists. YouTube collaborations need to be stepped up. Vacheron has been on YouTube since 2006. I checked their YouTube page. The problem, while I give them credit for being early to the punch, is that they have less than 1/4 of the views I've earned on a Watchbox review channel that I started in mid-2017 and film with stuff I bought at Costco. VC was ahead of the curve once on YouTube working with me on product videos, but the problem is they were VC's approved house style, and the entire process was highly chaperoned. Whether with me or with others on YouTube, Vacheron, get with this community. Don't be afraid to lose control of the process and the message. Vet your representatives early, vet the people you want to work with, and then let them be creative. It will solve you the problem of having to hire a marketing agency to tell you work with YouTubers. All right. Sincerity is the origin of marketing credibility, and you'll find it right here. Jumping into the box now, guys, we're going to do a little bit more interaction. I see Jonathan Collins saying, totally agreed that VC needs to trim its lines. And I've got a comment from JBO Surf. The old Trinity is dead. The new leaders are Journe, Lange, and Ferrier. Now, some of you have asked, why don't I see Lange as one of the members of the Holy Trinity down the road? Because the question came up last time, where do I see the Holy Trinity in 30 years' time? And I was willing to add and subtract from the usual suspects, but Lange, which deserves to be mentioned alongside those brands, perhaps even ahead of those brands today, wasn't part of the collection. I have no confidence in the ability of a great brand to thrive inside the Richemont hierarchy. I really feel like all the problems have started since the Richemont ownership. The only times corners have been cut on Lange watches were during the early days of the Richemont ownership with some of the 1815 watches, and that left a bad taste in my mouth. Stuff that you couldn't see was not finished appropriately. I love the brand, but in a hierarchy that's already struggled with JLC and struggled with Vacheron, I mean, I'm pulling my hair out and I don't have much left. I'm not sure how Lange manages to differentiate itself. It's not set up for success because of where it is and how that system operates. Okay, jumping into the box right here, I can see we've got a little bit of a stalled connection, so I'm going to talk a little bit about your viewer wrist shots that you've provided. Koi T builds his meal around a serving of oyster at the Earth Cafe in Las Vegas, Nevada with his Oyster Perpetual. Michael K proves that you can order a tropical drink and still have your Pepsi. Richard K celebrates Bastille Day in the Republic of South Africa with his 1966 JLC and Ford GT40 tribute car, and of course, the Ford GT40 won Le Mans in 1966. Philip M. is living the life with his Omega Seamaster Diver 300 meter in paradise. Send your wrist shots to mondaymailbag@thewatchbox.com, of course, to see your pieces on these pixels. Let's jump back into the box and see if my connection hasn't died. Unfortunately, this was designed to be the interactive show, and I have completely lost my internet connection. So guys, I deeply apologize for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make up for it by giving you something. Our Omega Railmaster winner. I've been pumping it for 6 weeks, and now, well, I'm not dumping it, but I'm going to give it away, and I'm going to give it away to one of our international contestants. We had over 26,000 unique entrants for this watch, and the winner is David Christea of Paris, France. Paris, David, I don't know if you're still up with us, but I'm sending you something. You should send me a wrist shot because I want to see it on your wrist. Show me something with French culture in the background. Anything from your neck of the woods to let me know it got there safe and sound. Okay, we're back in the box, and suddenly I have comments, and you guys are back with me. Paul F. is saying, Lange needs a steel sports watch ASAP. I could not agree more. It needs to be on a bracelet, it needs to be swimmable, it needs to be lavishly loomed, automatic winding, and unlike anything else they're currently offering. Don't just give me a swimmable Zeitwerk, Lange 1, or Datograph. Make it different, and then make it rare. I can also see right here, we have Sven saying, that's an interesting take on Lange and Richemont. Ron V, hi Tim, good to see you. Good to see you, Ron. It looks like you guys are back and live. So the live question and answer segment resumes. And then Mark S saying, damn it, Tim is losing his hair. I've been online for 5 years now, so you guys can definitely tell me if it's receding. It's all right. I wore 2 on the top, 1 on the sides in the military. If it goes away, I'm used to it. Plus, all the coolest people are bald. Moby's bald. Bruce Willis is bald. Professor X is bald. Why not me? And then right here, we've got Turkischer Meister saying the price disparity between the VC 47112 chronograph and a Patek Philippe 5970, powered by the same movement in the same precious metal, is attributable to what exactly? I would say, honestly, it's just mismanagement of the Vacheron brand. Why is a 5070 an investment watch and the 47112 is something that you buy for 65 cents on the dollar versus its original purchase price? Again, who was the steward of the Vacheron brand? I don't blame the people at the brand, and I don't blame the people who have captained the company. I mostly just blame the corporate hierarchy. Look, deliver for the quarter. Honor the shareholders. Returns. You make too many watches, you push them out the door, and down the road, the resale value pays the price. It's that simple. It's easy math. You don't need an MBA for this. And then right here, we've got Sutat saying George Costanza is bald too. Why not? And then John Doe saying, you lost me with Moby. Zach Blass is saying, Crador H2 in steel for only watch one day, distant dreams. And then we've got Pipboy8787 finally caught the live show. And of course, we've got Azake saying, Hajime Asaoka even makes his own gelatin stamp for inking. Didn't know that. That is a vertically integrated micro manufacturer, and you taught me something new. And then we've got Michael Taylor saying, thinking about getting a Zenith El Primero. Thoughts on Zenith? I love the brand, but you've got a world of choices. And the good news is you've got choices that are relatively rare and exquisite. 90s Zenith is probably one of the most underrated emerging vintage segments. I would say look for the chronometer certified Calibre 410 Chronomaster triple calendar moon phases from back then. 40mm stainless steel black dial. That's the one to own. Also look for the rainbow flyback. Look for the rainbow flyback and don't compromise. Get box, get papers, get it on the full bracelet. You can put it on a strap later if you want, but get the value with the bracelet. And of course, get it with the original tritium pip still in the bezel, because if you need to replace that bezel, it won't be replaced at the factory with tritium. So buy the watch intact, preferably never polished. There's a lot of fake service watches out there, so watch out for those. I would also say look at the red Primero and the blue Primero that came out in the early 2010s. Those are very handsome watches that you can purchase at wonderful prices. And if you want complication, I've always loved the Pilot Double-Matic. It's a grand date, it's an alarm with an on-off, it's a power reserve, it's a chronograph, it's a world time, but you have to have the wrist to wear a 45. That's my only proviso right there. And then right here, we've got Ron V opining that Rolex needs a new sub-bezel color. And then we've got Crappy Luxury wishing for a Haagen-Dazs salted caramel Rolex limited edition. Do you see these tan lines? I'm a cyclist here. You're making me very hungry with this talk of caramel Haagen-Dazs. That is not fair. This isn't a food show. And then finally right here, we've got Eric Nielsen saying, Rainbow Flyback has drilled Lug's word. And then as a 28, Tim, when you are purchasing a new watch, which pieces are you considering? When I'm purchasing a new watch, I'm looking for something that first and foremost suits my style and my aesthetic sensibilities, because realistically, we just have too many people buying watches that are approved by other folks, or that are popular in the right circles, or that have a brand that's supposed to be the correct one. If the watch doesn't look good on your wrist, everything else is secondary. So the first thing I look for is the style. And that's my style. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate everyone who tuned in. Thanks to you, thanks to my crew. We will have a new giveaway watch very shortly. I'm lobbying for a Zin 140 ST Space chronograph. Time out, Tim out, and thanks for logging on.